You're not bad at the LSAT, you're just applying the wrong playbook. You're using the same strategies that helped you ace college classes, highlighting, rereading, doing all the homework, and wondering why your score's stuck in place. But the LSAT isn't school. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what actually moves the needle. This is Dominic, and he's looking to improve from the 140s to a 165 in the next 4 months. My name is Steve Schwartz, and I've been teaching the LSAT for the past 20 years. Today, Dominic's going to bring me his biggest LSAT challenges, and I'll help him address them as he looks to improve by 15-20 points. So how's the programming coming along so far?
It's going great. I love the layout, and the getting started material was fantastic. I'm very grateful for that. And I just got my study plan in this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and start working on that after this call.
Okay, cool, awesome, fantastic. I'm glad that it's coming along well. Have you been able to join any of the live sessions yet?
I attempted to Monday night, and so I tried to follow along, like a reading comp section, I'm pretty sure. After not being able to follow along, I tried, I went onto Law Hub and I looked at my Law Hub more in depth. I think it's in the more advanced material, so I still need to access that. I'm going to do that today as well.
Okay. Good. Well, I'm glad you got to join that. And I know that it can be a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of new things to learn about the LSAT, especially the practice tests and the premium Law Hub and all of that, just to access the related materials to what we're covering in the sessions, but you'll pick it up with time, I'm sure.
Yes.
But anyway, I wanted to just have this quick call with you since we hadn't had the chance to meet yet, and I wanted to learn a bit more about you and your situation and see if I could give you any pointers or advice. Would that be useful for you?
Yes, please. That would be amazing.
Tell me a little bit about where you're at right now. Where are you currently scoring?
Currently, I've scored in the mid-high 140s. I took the LSAT back in January. I just graduated from my undergrad, so during the spring semester, I focused more on that than on my LSAT studying. But this summer, I'm really going to drill down and study much more in-depth than I did before. But for the January LSAT, I did score in the ranges of mid to high 140s. I have your LSAT Unplugged book. That was how I found your course. My main source of studying was the free tests on the Law Hub website, kind of just taking those tests over and over again. I realized a little too late that I was focusing more on memorizing than on understanding the different question types that you mentioned in the book, because I saw that I was consistently scoring in the mid 140s, so that kind of got me discouraged. But then I read the book, I realized what I was doing wrong, but I was a little too late at that point. I did apply some of the things that you mentioned in the book and that you mentioned in your course, but I don't think I was able to consistently enough before the January LSAT.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm glad you found the book helpful. I'm glad you found me and the program, of course. It sounds like you've learned some valuable lessons given what happened before so that you can avoid making those same mistakes again. Of course, the focus on understanding the strategies versus memorization is going to be really key for you as you look to improve from the mid to high 140. What's your goal for test day?
My goal for test day is at least a 165.
165. Okay. And when are you planning on taking it? How long do we have?
October is when I plan on taking it.
Solid. So we've got about 4 months and change to get you from the mid to high 140s up to the 165 plus. So we're looking at maybe 15-20 points in 4 months and change. Very doable, especially since it sounds like you've largely just been self-studying. Let me tell you one of the most frustrating things I hear from smart students. They'll say to me, I don't get it. I'm putting in the time. I'm doing the work. Why isn't my score going up? And if you're anything like that, disciplined, showing up every day, following all the advice, this can feel infuriating because it makes no sense. It should be working, but here's the kicker. You're not bad at the LSAT, you're just applying the wrong playbook. You're using the same strategies that helped you ace college classes, highlighting, rereading, doing all the homework, and wondering why your score's stuck in place. But the LSAT isn't school. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what actually moves the needle. School trains you to perform for grades. The LSAT trains you to think under pressure. Let's make the difference super clear. In college, you get partial credit for effort. You could write a decent essay and still get an A- due to grade inflation, and you could cram for the midterm and walk out with a curve-boosted score. But on the LSAT, there's no partial credit. There's no fluff. There aren't any bonus points for trying hard. You either saw the flaw in the argument or you didn't. You either followed the chain of conditional logic or you fell for the trap. This test is brutally objective, and that's why it feels unfair or if you're used to the school model. Now here's what actually works: pattern recognition, strategic review, and confidence under time pressure. Let's say you're doing a logical reasoning section. You're grinding through question after question, but your accuracy is not moving. Here's what's probably happening. You're not reviewing your mistakes in depth. You're not spotting why you fell for a trap, just that you did. And you're not training yourself to recognize structure. You're reading every stimulus like it's brand new. And if this is happening, I've got good news for you. The fix is not more hours. The fix is better systems. For example, predict before you look at the choices. Write down the conclusion and the support to force clarity, and use an error log that categorizes your misses by type, like causation, equivocation, and negation. That's what we teach our students, because when you start thinking like a problem solver instead of a note taker, you finally gain leverage. You don't need to study harder, you need to study like it's a sport. The LSAT isn't truly academic, it is athletic. You're building muscle memory, reaction time, intuition. They come from reps, feedback, mistakes you analyze and correct. We once had a student who plateaued for 5 weeks straight. She was stuck at a 160 and ready to give up. But when we shifted her strategy, fewer full sections, more focused drills, and targeted Socratic review, her score jumped to 173 in just 3 weeks. Now that's not a promise or a guarantee. Your results may vary, but I share this story to show you what's possible when you're willing to change your approach. Now this didn't happen because she suddenly got smarter, it's because she started training the right way. So if you've been grinding without results, it's not because you're lazy, and it's definitely not because you're incapable. It's because the LSAT punishes generic effort. It rewards strategic focus, intentional practice, and mindset shifts. So if what you're doing isn't working, don't double down. Pause and recalibrate and ask, am I studying the way I've always studied, or am I training for the test I'm actually taking? One of those will keep you stuck. The other will get you to your goal faster than you think.
What are some of the changes you're looking to make? Weak areas or low-hanging fruit right now?
The first one that comes to mind is kind of my reading speed. You mentioned in the book that some helpful, like having applications to train my brain how to read faster and reading more. So I'm definitely going to be putting that into practice. It's kind of just not understanding the question types. I could recognize the more I took the tests, I tried not to memorize and more of apply. I would switch everything up so often. I wouldn't take so many logical reasoning tests. I would switch it over to reading comp. So I would recognize the different question types that each section had, but I feel like I didn't give myself enough time to fully in-depth understand, so I could train my brain, oh, this is a flaw, or this is a reading comp type question. I also focused on eliminating the blatantly wrong answers. I don't know if that's a strategy that you recommend, but that's something that I found helpful at first. But reading the question first and then reading the logical reasoning section and looking at the answers and deciding which ones were obviously wrong.
Yeah. So to just confirm what you were sharing there, yes, reading the question first is a strategy I like because it gives you the proper lens or perspective from which to view the argument. Zooming out bigger picture, I think what you're alluding to is pattern recognition, that the more practice you do, the more you're going to learn the patterns of the test, because there is a limited bag of tricks that they keep pulling out of again and again and again. But the good thing is that because there are all these previously released exams, the prep tests in Law Hub, then if you expose yourself to more of those and you review them in more depth, then on test day, there will not be anything truly new to you. In other words, you will have seen it all before during your practice. And with 4 months till your test, you've got plenty of time to do dozens of these exams and review them in depth so that you can make the mistakes now, learn from them to avoid making them on the actual test.
Yes, thank you.
Let's paint the picture. You finish the passage, you move to the first question, you're reading the choices, and suddenly your brain short circuits. You're thinking, wait, where'd they say that? Was it paragraph 2, or was that the author's opinion? So you squint back at the screen, you start rereading, and you get more confused. Now you're stuck in the worst possible place on the LSAT. Not confused enough to skip the question, but not confident enough to pick the answer and move on. This is the reading comp spiral, and it's brutal. Now, the real problem isn't your reading speed, it's trust. Most people think they need to read faster or remember more, but what's actually happening is you don't trust your read of the passage. You finish the paragraphs, but you don't lock in their function. So when a question refers back to the example or the critic's perspective, you're like, I kinda remember, maybe I should just read it again. And that time adds up. 1 or 2 of those moments in a passage can cost you minutes. And when that happens 4 times in a whole section, you're toast.
So how do we fix this? You build a mental map, not a photographic memory. We coach our students to read passages with navigation in mind. That means tagging each paragraph with a label, like theory, example, critique, or transition. We also want to notice who's speaking. Is it the author, a scholar, a group of researchers? And we're also watching for tonal shifts, like however, in contrast, and some argue that signal important pivots. Because if you know where the key parts of the passage live, you don't need to remember every single detail. You just need to know where to look when a question asks for it. And this saves brain power. It saves time. And most importantly, it gives you the confidence to stop second guessing every answer. Now here's a bonus tip for you. Learn to predict before you scan the choices. Might sound obvious, but almost no one actually does it. Before you read the choices, ask yourself, what should the right answer say? This is just a quick gut check. Doesn't have to be perfect, but forcing yourself to make a prediction anchors your brain. Now, you're comparing answers to your expectation instead of being pulled in 5 different directions by 5 shiny choices. It's like walking into a grocery store with a list instead of wandering the aisles hungry. Now, reading comp is not about being brilliant. It's about being efficient, and efficiency comes from structure. So tag your paragraphs, notice the tone and the role, and predict before the choices. Once you can do that, you're going to stop feeling like you're drowning in every passage, and you'll start feeling like you're in control. And when that happens, you don't just save time, you gain confidence, and that's the biggest score booster of all.
Hey, real quick guys, if you're just getting started with your LSAT prep or you're looking for a quick refresher, you can grab your free Easy LSAT cheat sheet linked below this video. It's jam-packed full of concrete, actionable tactics you can take and apply to your LSAT prep for a quick score boost, and it's 100% free, so you can grab your copy below. And now, back to the show. So to your point about reading speed, as you mentioned, yes, there are apps for it like Phrase Reader and Spreader, basically putting yourself on that treadmill to display the text at faster and faster speeds so that you will be accustomed to reading that difficult, dense text from the passages, even with the time constraint on the actual exam.
Okay, cool.
Now let's talk about plateaus. You're putting in the hours, reviewing your tests, trying to be diligent, but your scores stay flat. This is one of the most frustrating moments in LSAT prep, and most students respond to it in exactly the wrong way. They'll say to themselves, okay, I guess I gotta study more. I'll do a full practice test, drill some sections, reread my notes, maybe throw in some reading comp passages, but this is the moment to actually slow down and go deep, not wide. Wide is shallow and deep leads to mastery. If you're plateauing, it doesn't mean you're bad at the LSAT. It means your improvement curve has shifted from volume-based to precision-based, and that's a good thing. It means you're past the beginner gains. Now, the next level comes from getting ruthless about one thing at a time. And so we tell our students, let's ignore your reading comp for a week. Let's only look at necessary assumption questions in logical reasoning, because progress accelerates when you stack your wins in one area, not when you scatter your attention everywhere. So let's say you're working on flaw questions. You don't just drill 20 random flaws. Instead, I want you to read 5 flaw questions very slowly. Pause after each one and ask, what's the conclusion? What's the flaw? And how would I describe that flaw in plain English? Then before you look at the choices, make a prediction. Literally write down what you expect to see. Then when you get it wrong, don't just say, ugh, and move on. Do a Socratic review. Ask yourself, why was this answer tempting? Why is it wrong? And why is the right one right? That's where the growth happens. You're not just fixing that question, you're fixing the way your brain approaches every future question like it. And once you go deep like this, something amazing starts to happen. You begin to feel like, wait, I actually get this now. Not just I memorized a trick, but I can see what they're doing. That's what we want, because when you go into test day with real understanding, not just pattern recall, that's when the score jumps and stays there. So remember, plateaus don't mean you're broken. They just mean it's time to switch gears. Instead of doing more, zoom in and simplify things. Pick one area and go deep. Then you're going to come out the other side with real expertise, because the LSAT does not reward generalists. It rewards precision, and precision starts with focus.
So you mentioned reading comp, you mentioned earlier memorizing logical reasoning, I assume question types. Are there any particular question types giving you trouble right now?
Where I could recognize some because I had taken so many of those drill sets before, I couldn't go ahead and tell you, oh, this is a such and such question type. Then that's something I want to really hone in on during this course too.
Yeah, so that basic
familiarity is going to be step number one, laying that strong foundation. We could divide LSAT prep broadly into three major phases, and you saw this in the book as well: accuracy, pacing, endurance, right? So accuracy is building that familiarity with the 15 or so different types of logical reasoning questions, the types in reading comp as well. That's not going to be enough to get you a 165, but it'll be the first step. Step two is pacing, working on your time management to solve the questions within the 35-minute allotment per section. Then endurance is third and final phase, pulling it all together with the full-length practice tests. And with 4 months, you devote roughly, say, 5 weeks to foundation, 5 weeks to pacing, 5 weeks to endurance. All of that added together is your roughly 4 months, and that's what's going to get you from the 149 to the 165. No one single phase will do it, but all of them combined are going to get you that 15-point increase. Now let's talk about something nobody wants to admit. Sometimes the best move you can make for your LSAT score is to do absolutely nothing, to close the books, log out of Law Hub, and walk away. Why? Because if you're burned out, if you're mentally fried, if every question feels like a chore, then more studying is like pouring water into a broken cup. You don't need more, you just gotta fix the cup. Now, most people don't realize they're burned out until they're deep in it. They'll say things like, I feel like I should study, but I just can't focus. Or, I keep rereading the same passage and zoning out. I'm getting worse even though I'm studying more. That's not laziness, that's a signal. It's your brain saying, hey, I need a minute. And so we often schedule these breaks into our students' study plans on purpose, especially after a big push or right before test day, because recovery is part of performance. And you might be thinking to yourself, if I stop, I'm gonna lose all my progress. No, you won't. In fact, we often see the opposite with our students. They'll come back from a few days off and suddenly they're faster at reading comp passages. They spot flaws more easily and they feel more confident with everything. Why does this happen? Because your brain needs downtime to consolidate information. And this isn't just touchy-feely woo-woo advice, it's neuroscience. It's the same reason athletes don't train at 100% intensity every single day. Rest is when the muscle rebuilds, and your brain works the same way. So here's how to take a strategic LSAT break and not sabotage yourself. Now let's be clear, I'm not saying to go off and disappear for a month and pretend the test doesn't exist. I'm saying take 2 to 5 days. Make it clean. No sneaky reviewing, no just one reading comp passage. I want you to use that time to sleep, move your body, and reflect on what has been working and what hasn't. When you come back, ease into it with light drills. Don't jump straight into a full-length practice test. Treat it like rehab, not punishment. Now remember, burnout doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care. It means you've been pushing hard, maybe too hard, and your brain's waving a little white flag. So respect that, because breaks don't slow you down. They position you to come back sharper, stronger, and ready to actually apply what you've been learning. And that's how you turn effort into results. How many hours would you say you could put in on average between now and the test in October?
I can give you a couple different answers because my life's gonna alternate a lot in the next couple months, hopefully, if everything works out, because I'm actively looking for a full-time job. And so if I do get one within the next couple of months, then that's definitely gonna impact my study time. And then I'm also getting married at the end of the summer too. At the end of August, I'm getting married, and so hoping to go on a honeymoon. I think I saw that implemented in my study plan, but just the fact that, you know, all this stuff is going to happen, and so stuff can fluctuate. Like if I get a full-time job, probably not gonna be able to study as much. But as of right now, with a part-time job, I'm hoping to study 5 to 6 hours a day. I put 6 to 7 initially because I was being optimistic, but with all the planning and with all the job search and stuff like that, I might need to cut back to 5 to 6-ish.
All right, well, congrats on the upcoming wedding.
Thank you.
That's exciting. You've got a lot of big changes going on here. And yes, those will affect your studying, of course. And so a couple things I'll say. One is make hay while the sun shines. You got the time now. Make the most of it. If you can do 5-6 hours a day without burning out, do that. Then once you have the job, you might need to reduce it a bit. Obviously, wedding things can affect your studying as well. The honeymoon certainly will as well. And so as you know that going in, we've already adjusted your plan accordingly to account for the upcoming changes. But if you need revisions, of course, you can let us know and make the most of what you have. Now let's talk about that inner voice, the one that shows up right after you choose an answer and says, wait, is that really right? So you reread the question, reread the answer, look back at the stimulus, and start doubting yourself. You change the answer, then you get it wrong, and you realize your first instinct was right all along. Sound familiar? If you've been second guessing everything on the LSAT, here's the good news. You're not broken or indecisive, you're smart, but your brain is overthinking things in the wrong direction. Now, high achievers are often the worst at multiple choice practice tests like the LSAT. Because back when you were in school, being detail-oriented was rewarded. You got points for being thorough, and teachers loved your thorough explanations. But the LSAT isn't looking for nuance, it's looking for precision. The right answer isn't the most thoughtful, it's the one that matches the logic. So when you start doubting and digging and rationalizing, you're usually moving away from the core of the question. So the real skill here is learning to trust your gut when it's trained and ignore it when it's not. So here's a simple rule I want you to apply. First instincts are only useful if you review your patterns. Now let me be clear about this. I'm not saying to always trust your first answer, that's too simplistic. But what I am saying is this: if you consistently find your first choice was right and then you changed it, that's a pattern. And if your gut's often wrong, that's also a pattern. And so we actually track this with our students. We'll ask, how many questions did you change? How many of those were right before you changed them? And what triggered the doubt? It's about the data. Once you know your own second-guessing behavior, you can train around it. So here are some practical tips to reduce your second-guessing without losing accuracy. First, limit rereads. You get one reread max. If you're still unsure after that, flag it and move on. Secondly, use prediction. Before you look at the answers, write down what the right one should say. In other words, prephrase. Third, talk it out. Even if you're studying on your own, verbalize your guessing. Verbalize your reasoning. Articulate it. Saying it out loud forces clarity. And finally, log every answer you changed during timed sections. Then review why you changed it. This gives you awareness, and awareness gives you power. So bottom line, second guessing doesn't come from being bad at the LSAT. It comes from caring too much about being right and not enough about being clear. The more you train clarity, the more you'll trust your instincts. And the more you trust your instincts, the faster and more confident you'll become. And confidence is worth at least 5 raw score points.
Real quick, guys, a lot of you have been asking me how you can be featured in one of these LSAT study breakdowns and get feedback on your approach. The only way is to join one of my LSAT coaching programs. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And now, back to the show. You don't need to do 6 hours a day for 4 months to get the increase you're looking for. It could be that you do 6 hours a day now to build that foundation. Then once you've already built the foundation, you can reduce it a bit, working more on just timed sections and then just on timed exams and review. And that alone might be enough. We'll see what happens. Every student's different, but you put in the time where you can to maximize the score increase that you can get.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
There's this toxic idea floating around that says you've got to do hundreds of questions a week to improve. But that's like saying the only way to get stronger at the gym is to do every single machine every single day. It's not just unnecessary, but it can actually be counterproductive. Because if you're doing 80 questions a day and not reviewing them properly, you're just reinforcing your existing habits, not correcting your mistakes. The problem is that more questions does not automatically translate into more learning. Here's what actually happens when students brute force their way through drills. They'll go fast, but they don't slow down to understand the logic, and they're not tracking what kind of questions they're missing or why. And so after a month of that, they are exhausted, confused, and they end up oftentimes plateauing. So here's the new rule I want you to adopt. More volume does not guarantee growth, focused reps do. In other words, quality over quantity. So let's say you've been struggling with must be true and strengthen questions in logical reasoning. Instead of doing 50 random questions from every single category, try picking 10 must be true questions from recent practice tests, and before answering, write down what kind of information must be true based on the stimulus. Then answer it, and if you get it wrong, spend 5-10 minutes unpacking what was the stimulus really saying. Why did I find the wrong answer tempting? And what made the right one right? That is deep work. Then do the same with 10 strengthen questions. In this case, you're only doing 20 questions total, but the quality of learning is 10 times higher than blitzing through 100 without understanding a single flaw. And so when we work with students, we actually slow them down. One of the first things we'll do is say, stop doing so many questions. Let's focus on just one thing for the next 3 days. Why? Because progress on the LSAT isn't about how many questions you do. It's about how much insight you extract from the few that you do. And when that clicks, everything accelerates. You start seeing question types before you read the stem. You spot patterns without even thinking. And you trust your logic instead of second guessing everything. And that's what we want. In other words, you wouldn't train for a marathon by sprinting blindly for hours every single day. You would follow a plan. You would focus on your form, your pace, and your recovery. Same deal with the LSAT. You don't have to do everything, you've just got to do the right things the right way consistently. And when you do, that's when your score jumps.
You mentioned that you're just kind of getting into it now. Given that you have all these changes coming up, you might get the job, of course you have the wedding and the honeymoon coming up. Do you think that you might benefit from a bit more support rather than just the classes, like maybe for some one-on-one support, one-on-one coaching?
Possibly. If it's okay, I want to get my feet wet into the program first, see where I need the coaching, see where I need the improvement. And I do plan on being completely transparent with you all. And I'm so very grateful for my study plan. I like a very structured study program. So this is great. And so like whenever I do get the job, I want to like confirm I have a job, like I've signed on the dotted line. I'm going to reach out to you all and as soon as possible and let you know that that's happening so that we can adjust accordingly. But yeah, I think a one-on-one coaching would be great. Gives me the familiarity of a classroom. I feel like I definitely thrive in that more than kind of self-study. With taking online and in-person classes over my undergrad, I definitely thrive more in person with the material kind of not being taught, but kind of like with someone there helping to filter it, learn more a little about the course and what I can do. And if the one-on-one coaching, something I feel like I need, then I would, of course, reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, the door's always open. We're just here to support you in getting to your goal. As you have more time available now, it could just be that all you've got to do is follow the plan that we've laid out for you, watch the videos, follow the lessons, join the semi-private sessions. And then if your needs change, if you get the job and you have less time to study on your end, that may be the point at which you want to increase the efficiency through getting the support after you've already built that strong foundation. So yeah, I mean, that's a good approach. Just reach out and we'll set you up with a coach that's best for you based on your schedule and your needs when the time comes. But it sounds like in the meantime, you already have the time. You got to do is a matter of simply following the plan, sticking to it, and then of course being in touch as you need things as things evolve and change.
All right.
Now let's get one thing straight. Taking a break from LSAT prep is not some kind of failure. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean you don't want it badly enough. And it definitely doesn't mean you're falling behind. In fact, for a lot of students, especially high achievers like Dominic, taking a break is one of the smartest, most strategic things you can do. And that's exactly what happened here. Most people think of LSAT prep like a treadmill. If you stop walking, you fall off. So they just keep going, even when they're exhausted, frustrated, and mentally checked out. But here's what the research and our experience tells us. Your brain consolidates learning during rest. I mean, think about how you feel after a great night of sleep. Suddenly, that thing you couldn't figure out yesterday, boom, it now makes sense. Same deal with the LSAT. When you've been hammering at the test for weeks and you take a step back for a few days or even a few weeks, your brain has a chance to catch up. Patterns click, concepts settle, and your confidence starts to rebuild. So what stood out here is that this wasn't just a whatever break. It was intentional. Dominic came back with a plan. He re-engaged with fresh eyes and felt the difference. And this is the part most people miss. They either push through burnout until they flame out entirely, or they take a break, feel guilty the whole time, and never return with a strategy. For our students, we sometimes build in breaks, especially if they've been grinding for months. And when they return, we shift the focus. We rebuild their timing and accuracy, and we capitalize on the mental clarity they just earned. That's when scores move, not during the burnout, but after the reset. And so if you've taken time off or you're even thinking about it, you're not slacking. You're being smart, because the goal is not to study every day without stopping. The goal is to walk into test day with a calm, clear, sharp mind and a strategy that works. And sometimes the fastest path forward is to pause, recover, and reset, just like Dominic did.